Last week, we talked about the FBI's raid of Donald Trump's Florida home, which sparked a familiar divisive storm with Donald Trump again smack dab in the middle. Republicans condemned the raid as an abuse of power, while Democrats celebrated. Now, if MSNBC is right and Trump was trafficking nuclear secrets to Putin, then sure, the raid is justified, and MSNBC does have a respectable track record when it comes to reporting on Trump.
You now have a president, as you said, talking about exterminating Latinos.
Donald Trump is giving them subliminal orders in their head.
He is inciting hatred, inciting violence, inciting racism.
Okay, maybe not, but I'm sure they're doing their best. And then there's the hypocrisy of it all, given that Hunter Biden commits criminal acts on an almost daily basis, and Hillary Clinton handed classified documents to Russia before destroying the evidence with Clorox and a baseball bat. But if you can just plug your ears and ignore the screaming from both sides, anybody with half a brain cell should at least question how much we can trust an institution controlled by one party in power that openly hates the other side. After all, the FBI reports to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who was appointed by President Joe Biden, whose primary political rival is Donald Trump. Also the man who stopped Garland from getting his dream job on the Supreme Court. Oh, and Merrick Garland gave the order on the raid. So when you view it through that lens and look past the murky swamp that is DC, you'll find something really important that people are missing. The FBI sucks, and it's sucked since its inception. When you understand just how awful they've been for decades, it blows my mind that anyone can still trust the integrity of the FBI. So we tasked Nick, sporting your dad's female body inspector t-shirt from the 90s, with compiling a list of the FBI's biggest blunders. Now, for context, the FBI is the principal federal law enforcement agency of the United States, operating under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice. With a budget of almost $10 billion, its primary mission is to waste taxpayer dollars. But they'll tell you it's actually to protect those taxpayers and uphold the Constitution. In reality, the history of the FBI is full of screw-up after screw-up, and crime after crime. Many of them happening under one of the agency's most instrumental founders, J. Edgar Hoover. He was appointed director of the Bureau of Investigation in 1924 and was director of the FBI from its founding in 1935 until Hoover's death in 1972. And the fact that Hoover referred to the FBI as the seat of government tells you all you need to know. With a rich history of secrecy and abuses of power. Let's take a look, shall we? In the 1970s, an anti-war group conspired to break into FBI offices to uncover what they believed to be illegal spying and harassment of anti-war protesters. With Scooby-Doo level disguises, they were able to walk right into the unlocked building while the entire bureau was distracted by the Ali Frazier title fight. And despite the FBI investigating a burglary of their own office, they never figured out who did it. Bravo! Surprisingly, the file stolen ended up proving that the worst accusations and conspiracy theories about the FBI's behavior at the time were utterly true. This was all exposed in 1971 after NBC reporter Carl Stern successfully sued for access to the stolen documents, leading to the uncovering of one word, COINTELPRO. Hoover started COINTELPRO, a covert dirty tricks program, in 1956, with tactics including infiltration, burglaries, setting up illegal wiretaps, planting forged documents, and spreading false rumors about key members of target institutions. While some even argue that methods including inciting violence and arranging murders. One example was the surveillance and harassment of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., including attempts to bully him into killing himself. A letter sent to the civil rights icon labeled him as a fraud and a great liability to all us Negroes, threatening him with exposing all of King's supposed dirt, filth, evil, and moronic talk, repeating time after time that he's finished and that all of his evilness, including sexual orgies, will be on the record. Here's how this particular letter, again sent by the FBI, ended. King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do. This exact number has been selected for a specific reason. It has definite practical significance. You are done. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. The FBI also tried to blackmail King with recordings of him having sex with other women, sending them to his wife and offering them to journalists. I wonder what Kim Kardashian and Ray J did to piss off the FBI. Also, apparently this is one element of institutional racism that no one seems to care about anymore. And the racist undertones of the FBI didn't start or end with Martin Luther King Jr. If you've seen the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, you know the story of Black Panther Fred Hampton, who was shot and killed in his bed by Chicago police in December 1969 after being drugged. He was also set up by an FBI informant. Actress Jean Seberg killed herself after the FBI planted a story with a news columnist that she had slept with a Black Panther and gotten pregnant. And in 1965, a white civil rights worker was murdered by a group of KKK members, one of whom was an FBI informant. The Klansmen chased Viola Luzzo and fired shots into her car when they saw that her passenger was black. Afterwards, the FBI spread rumors that the murdered Luzzo was a communist, a drug addict, and that she abandoned her children to have sex with African Americans in the civil rights movement. According to FBI documents, J. Edgar Hoover personally relayed these insinuations to then President Johnson. What a nice guy. But it's unfair to blame all of the FBI's failings on Hoover himself because after his death, the FBI kept on going. Who knows what damage was done by the crime boss Whitey Bulger from 1975 onwards? The FBI essentially allowed him to do what he wanted because he was handing over information on the inner workings of a rival mafia family. And this trail of violence was more brutally obvious in other cases. The FBI were involved in the disastrous Waco siege in 1993, which culminated in a fire that killed 76 of the Branch Davidians living in the besieged building, including 26 children. Years later, it was revealed that some of the 400 tear gas canisters fired by the FBI were flammable. In 2005, Puerto Rico's governor claimed that the FBI assault which led to the killing of a Puerto Rican nationalist leader was improper and highly irregular, and that his government was never told of it. Some people labeled this as an assassination, and the FBI refused to release any information beyond the official press release. In 2013, Ibrahim Todashev, an associate of the mastermind of the Boston Marathon bombers, was killed by an FBI agent during an interrogation. The FBI also blocked the autopsy report because the case was still under active investigation. And then there's the violence not due to violent intent or alleged intent, but violent incompetence. For example, 2 days after the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in 2018, the FBI admitted that they had received a tip-off 1 month beforehand. The caller provided information about the shooter's gun ownership, desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. They did nothing about it, and later reported that protocol was not followed when the tip was not forwarded to the Miami field office. 17 people were killed by the shooter. And in 2015, a white supremacist committed a mass shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, despite the fact that he shouldn't have been able to buy a firearm legally, having confessed to possessing narcotics. But the FBI didn't reject the background check because they screwed up the individual's information and confused 2 different police departments. So the shooter was able to buy a firearm and murdered 9 people. And in one case, the FBI looked into someone who wrote on a message board that he was, quote, plotting a mass shooting and looking for, quote, weapons that are good for killing a lot of people within a budget. He then told the agents that he's, quote, not the type to actually do any of this stuff, and they agreed and closed the case. They also didn't inform the school. The next year, that person committed a school shooting, killing 2 students and then himself. And the history of the FBI is as bloody as it is incompetent. First, there's what the Department of Justice called possibly the worst intelligence disaster in US history, when Special Agent Robert Hanssen was arrested for spying for the Soviet Union and then Russia for over 20 years. In another example, when the FBI raided the home of a political activist in 2010, they left the confidential government operations order behind, which included plans for the raid, photographs, and potential interview questions, and didn't even realize what they'd done until the documents were posted online. In 2008, the FBI had their phone line cut during a national security investigation because they forgot to pay the bill. And if you have a face, maybe you should be worried that the FBI might use it for a wanted poster if they really need a good photo. When the FBI were trying to catch Whitey Bulger after he fled, they used the photographs of a random retired couple who suddenly became the center of an international manhunt. This also happened to a Spanish politician when the FBI used a bunch of his facial features to build what they thought an up-to-date image of Osama bin Laden would look like. And finally, there are cases that are just plain weird. There's a time an FBI agent impersonated a journalist from the Associated Press and unintentionally infected a 15-year-old suspect's computer with malicious surveillance software. A Caltech graduate student found that FBI computers were used to edit the FBI article on Wikipedia. There's the story when a would-be school bomber noticed before his arrest that a nearby wireless connection popped up as FBI surveillance van. There's an undercover FBI agent who admitted to using a video camera that didn't record audio and didn't catch visual evidence of an alleged murder plot. Another FBI agent crashed a top-of-the-line Ferrari F50 into a bush, and he refused to pay $750,000 in damages after being instructed to move the vehicle, which was still involved in an investigation. There's also a time the FBI were investigating video of an apparent murder scene, which turned out to be footage of the band Nine Inch Nails filming a music video. And then there's the FBI agent who fell in love with the person she was investigating. Oh, and that person was a German rapper turned ISIS terrorist. Yeah, in 2014, the agent fell in love with Dennis Cuthbert, whose rap name was Dezo Dog, and terrorist name was Abu Talha al-Armani. She left her husband to marry Abu, fleeing to Syria before fleeing back to the US when she realized that being married to a man who held a freshly severed head in a propaganda video for ISIS wasn't the romantic fairy tale she was promised. To be fair, Abu did ask her to fly to Syria for some head. Time after time, the FBI screws up. And I'm not even mentioning the multiple high-profile calamities in recent years, like the FBI's failure to act on allegations made by US gymnasts against former team doctor Larry Nassar, or taking orders from a fraudster who was stealing from a crime scene, or bot dialing a serial killer, tipping him off and setting him free, or spending 2 years investigating an anti-goth cult, which was actually a satire website. So when the FBI is built on a rotten foundation and populated by the kind of geniuses who name their Wi-Fi FBI surveillance van, is it really any surprise that the agency is so easily abused? Are you really surprised that the FBI would be used to target political enemies, given that's what they've been doing from the start? Are you really surprised that the FBI would be used to mislabel law-abiding American citizens as domestic terrorists to justify censorship, or worse, given that's what they've been doing from the start? Are you really surprised that the FBI routinely fails in its fundamental responsibilities to protect law-abiding American citizens from actual crime, given that's what they've been doing from the start? If you still think the FBI is a force for good at this point, you're either stupid or you're in the FBI. But I repeat myself. Thanks for watching. If you like that clip, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch full episodes and other clips just like this one. Make sure you ring the bell for notifications and tell all your friends about it.